So I've made a lot of videos for my channel about acting Oscar wins and nominations, but what about those people who have never been nominated? Hi, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender, and this video has been a long time coming, talking about the best actors in the industry who have never received a single Oscar nomination. Now, there were so many people to talk about, I decided to split this video into two. Today we're talking about the best male actors who've never been nominated, and there's a lot of amazing talent to go over in this video. Now, I decided to only focus on living actors so you won't see like Donald Sutherland here. And I also made an effort to pick actors who have had at least one legitimate shot at an Oscar nomination. Are you ready? The top 10 male actors who've never been Oscar nominated. Let's start with number 10, Idris Elba.
We have been defending ourselves against the killings and rapings of our own people from the PLF and now from the NRC junta.
So what a powerhouse actor Idris Elba is in film and in television. He's racked up so many award nominations and wins throughout the years. Like, he's been nominated for a bunch of Emmys. He's won at the Globes, and he's won at SAG, and it's weird to think, after how many years Idris Elba has been a major force in the industry, and he hasn't gotten an Oscar nomination? Really? He got a Golden Globe nomination for playing Nelson Mandela in the film Mandela: Long Walk to Freedom, but that came out in 2013, and Best Actor that year was stacked. But there absolutely was a performance he is given in the movies that should have received an Oscar nomination, and that was in 2015's Beasts of No Nation, which was a Netflix movie. And the Oscars, the Academy, they were still kind of pushing against streaming movies, like films that premiered on streaming. And so he didn't get the Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, which was really weird because he won at SAG. Like, he won the prize for Supporting Actor at SAG, got in at BAFTA, and then the Academy was like, no, it's a Netflix movie, like, we're not going there. And it's just so absurd. This man should be an Oscar nominee, and honestly, that season, he should have been a frontrunner to win the gold trophy. Number 9, Oscar Isaac.
I told you you're wasting your time talking to her. However, you would not be wasting your time if you were dancing with her.
I mean, come on. You look at Oscar Isaac's filmography of the last decade plus, and you're like, well, obviously he got an Oscar nomination for something in there, right? Inside Llewyn Davis, A Most Violent Year, Ex Machina. But no, he got a Golden Globe nomination for Inside Llewyn Davis. He was nominated at Golden Globes and SAG and the Emmys for his amazing performance in the limited series Scenes from a Marriage, but like nothing at the Oscars, and it's frustrating because Oscar Isaac is so talented and he's done such great work throughout the years in a variety of films, variety of genres. Like, his supporting turn in Ex Machina was one of my favorite performances of that year, also 2015, like Beasts of No Nation. And that he was never really a serious contender for that movie bugs me. A Most Violent Year is so underrated. He is incredible in that. He's won some critics' prizes. I mean, people take him seriously, and I feel like his Oscar nomination is coming, but it hasn't happened yet. And it doesn't make sense to me. Number 8, Ewan McGregor.
No, love is like oxygen.
What?
Love is a many splendid thing. Love lifts us up where we belong. All you need is love.
Ewan McGregor is another actor I adore who has made so many amazing films going back to the 1990s, going back to Trainspotting, and he is yet another person you might be surprised to learn has never received an Oscar nomination. Now, despite him doing such great work for decades, there was really only one performance he had a legitimate shot at an Oscar nomination, and that was Moulin Rouge from 2001. He got the Golden Globe nomination. He got in at SAG Ensemble, and then Moulin Rouge at the Oscars got into Best Picture and Best Actress for Nicole Kidman. And I always look at that Best Actor lineup, and I'm like, did Sean Penn have to get nominated for I Am Sam? Couldn't we have pushed that nomination for Penn aside and given the nomination instead to the amazing Ewan McGregor, who is so fantastic in Moulin Rouge? I mean, he carries that movie on his shoulders. He's emotional, he sings, he dances, he has great chemistry with Nicole Kidman, and the Academy really liked the movie. It's weird to me that McGregor couldn't get in there, and sadly since, there hasn't been an obvious performance of his that could get an Oscar nomination. Like, I love him in Dr. Sleep from 2019, but that's a genre movie, and it didn't do well at the box office. Like, that was never gonna happen. So we keep waiting, I guess, for that Ewan McGregor Oscar nomination. I do think it's a matter of time. Number 7, Richard Gere.
How much is the reward, Miss Kelly?
I don't know. How much?
I'll work it out after the trial.
Richard Gere has to be one of the most famous actors in the industry who has had such a long career in film, going back to the 1970s, who's never gotten an Oscar nomination. Like Richard Gere, who's in Days of Heaven, An Officer and a Gentleman, Pretty Woman, Primal Fear, and Chicago, just to name a few, and he never got a nomination. Like, he's in a bunch of movies that get acting Oscar nominations for other people, like An Officer and a Gentleman gets into Best Actress for Deborah Winger, Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts gets in, Primal Fear, Edward Norton almost, I would argue, wins the Oscar in Supporting Actor. And then Chicago wins a bunch of things, including supporting actress for Catherine Zeta-Jones. I mean, to be honest, Richard Gere is not one of my favorites by any means, but his performance in Chicago should have gotten an Oscar nomination. He won the Golden Globe Award, gave a great speech, and the Academy went nuts for Chicago. I mean, it won the Best Picture prize. Renee Zellweger was probably a close second in Best Actress to Nicole Kidman for The Hours, and it's like Michael Caine gets into Best Actor for The Quiet American, which wasn't a big film that year. Richard Gere is snubbed again, and he's at the ceremony, and so I don't know, it just feels like a missed opportunity in a way. That was the one year we could have given Richard Gere the Oscar nomination. It would have made sense. He's still very active in the industry, he pops up in things all the time, so maybe that great character role is out there for Richard Gere. It would be cool for him at some point to get an Oscar nomination. Number 6, Steve Buscemi.
Why did you say that she was hiding from me? Did she say anything to you about me?
Yeah, she thinks you're a dork.
She said that?
I love Steve Buscemi. He is just one of the greats. Every time he appears in a movie or a TV show, I smile. I get very excited. And the thing is about this wonderful actor is that he should have an Oscar nomination by now. It's kind of ridiculous that there's never been an Oscar nomination for Steve Buscemi. He got a lot of awards attention for the TV series Boardwalk Empire. When it comes to movies, you might think Fargo was his best chance, but William H. Macy kind of took the mantle in the Best Supporting Actor category for that film, so that was unfortunate. But Ghost World. Steve Buscemi should have gotten an Oscar nomination in Best Supporting Actor for Ghost World 100%. That is such a beautiful, nuanced performance in that movie. He got a Golden Globe nomination. He won Best Supporting Actor at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. He won some critics' prizes. Like, he was on awards radar for that movie. Unfortunately, Ghost World came out in the summer. It was kind of a small release. By the time we got to early 2002, it wasn't one of the major contenders of the season, I would say. But it did get a Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar nomination, so they were watching it, and it's like, did we have to nominate Jon Voight for Ali in Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars? Hell no. That slot should have gone to Steve Buscemi for Ghost World, making this amazing actor an Oscar nominee. Number 5, Danny Glover.
You can't cuss nobody. Look at you. You're black, you're poor, you're ugly, you're a woman, you're nothing at all.
Danny Glover is such a wonderful actor. He has been for decades. You would assume at some point he got an Oscar nomination, but it's never happened. Shockingly, he's never been a serious contender for the Oscars. Like, there hasn't been a role for him that got him in a Golden Globes and won him a bunch of critics prizes, and then he missed the Oscars. Like, he's so terrific in Lethal Weapon and The Royal Tenenbaums and Dreamgirls and countless other titles. And for me, the one film he made that he absolutely should have gotten an Oscar nomination for, that he at least should have gotten nominated at the Golden Globes for, was for his memorably villainous performance in 1985's The Color Purple, which got 11 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actress for Whoopi Goldberg. It got 2 Supporting Actress nominations, but they couldn't make room in Best Actor for Danny Glover. I mean, I guess you could argue that could be supporting actor. He's kind of in the middle in that movie. I think it's a lead actor performance. As I talked about in my acting Oscar snubs of the 1980s video, the great Danny Glover should be an Oscar-nominated actor, and his nomination should have been for The Color Purple. Number 4, John Goodman.
May I speak to Mr. Kevin Harkins?
I'm sorry, Mr. Harkins is out of country on a location scout. May I take a message?
So this one hurts my heart a little bit, to be honest. John Goodman is one of the greatest actors in the industry who has not received an Oscar nomination. He has been so consistently excellent in movie after movie for decades. And for him to only have 1 Golden Globe nomination for a movie, Barton Fink, from 1991, nothing at BAFTA, nothing at the Oscars. Like, what are these people smoking? John Goodman is such a talented actor. He brings his A game to a variety of genres. He is so fantastic in 10 Cloverfield Lane. That could have been a really cool Oscar nomination. He's in a bunch of Coen Brothers movies like Barton Fink and The Big Lebowski and Inside Llewyn Davis. Like, they could have recognized him for a Coen Brothers movie along the way. And then there's his wonderful performance in Argo, which won the Oscar for Best Picture. And instead of going with Goodman in supporting actor, which would have made him the only person in the category who hadn't already won an Oscar before, they go with Alan Arkin, who had just won a few years back for Little Miss Sunshine. And that nomination's fine, I guess, but John Goodman, I think, is as good, if not better, than Alan Arkin in that movie. And it would have been a really cool moment for the Academy to recognize the greatness of John Goodman. Number 3, Kurt Russell.
You listen to me. We're gonna go to Los Alamos on Thursday. And get a full body count from some doctors know what the hell they're doing. All 3 of us.
This guy is another one of my favorites. Like, anytime Kurt Russell pops up in something, I am excited to see him. He's always been a fantastic actor going back to, the 1960s? I mean, he started as a child actor in Disney films, and then he was in Elvis at the end of the 1970s, the TV miniseries by John Carpenter, and then he graduated to adult roles starting in the 1980s, often working with John Carpenter in films like Escape from New York and The Thing. Sadly, even though Kurt Russell has made so many great films throughout the decades, he's never been one to chase awards. Like, he works in a lot of genre movies, a bunch of action films, science fiction, horror. Like, he does all of that stuff, and he's not going to get Oscar nominated for it. One of his best performances in his long career is in the action suspense film Breakdown from 1997. It's kind of underrated. Not everybody has seen that film, but both Russell and J.T. Walsh, who plays the villain, are incredible. Kurt Russell has worked with Quentin Tarantino a few times, and Tarantino movies do very well at the Oscars. Probably the closest Russell came to an Oscar nomination for a Tarantino movie would have been The Hateful Eight. He is excellent in that, and his co-star Jennifer Jason Leigh was nominated in Supporting Actress. But the most traditional dramatic role that Kurt Russell played in the early 1980s that is the only film that's ever gotten him a Golden Globe nomination, and that probably got him close to an Oscar nomination, was in Silkwood from director Mike Nichols, also starring Meryl Streep and Cher. Like Streep got into Best Actress, Cher got into Supporting Actress, Kurt Russell was probably hovering around 6th or 7th place to get the Oscar nomination. That's been his best shot at an Oscar nomination in his long career, I would say. I don't feel very confident that Kurt Russell will ever get an Oscar nomination. I'm not feeling it at this moment, but if that were to happen, I will be the first to jump out of my seat and cheer. Number 2, Steve Martin.
Where are we going? Got to find Procalasa.
I can't go in there.
Skylar will think Excuse me, this is a private conversation. Do you mind?
So the Academy did the right thing about a decade ago and gave Steve Martin a much-deserved honorary Oscar for his work in film, and that was great. But when it comes to competitive Oscar nominations between his gigs in acting and screenwriting, Steve Martin should have received an Oscar nomination for something. I know his work in film was primarily comedic. Like, comedic performances are tougher to get in at the Oscars, like I talk about on this channel all the time, but especially in the 1980s, when it comes to Steve Martin in the movies, you have All of Me, you have Roxanne, you have Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and you have Parenthood. Like, he couldn't get an Oscar nomination for one of those 4 performances. Especially, I would say, All of Me should have made it happen. He won a couple big critics prizes for Best Actor. He got in at the Golden Globes, and it's just one of those groundbreaking comedic performances that would have made for a very cool Oscar nomination. He was also worthy of being Oscar nominated for his screenplays to Roxanne and LA Story and Bowfinger. Martin being recognized in original screenplay for that movie, like, I would have gone insane. I would have been so happy for him. It would have been well deserved. He's currently doing terrific work in the TV series Only Murders in the Building. He keeps getting Emmy nominated for that show, and that's great. But from what I understand, Steve Martin is kind of bowing out of making movies, and so sadly, a competitive Oscar nomination doesn't look to be in the cards for Steve Martin. It's such a shame. He's so talented. He has done such great work in movies going back to the 1970s, but at least he has that consolation prize, the honorary Oscar. Alright, before I get to my number 1 choice, a few runners up. Kevin Bacon is an amazing actor who should have an Oscar nomination by now. I mean, he's in JFK, he's in A Few Good Men, he's in Apollo 13, he's in Mystic River, he's in a bunch of movies that get in at the Oscars, and he's so famous, so prolific, but he's just never had that signature dramatic role that ever got him into like Golden Globes, SAG, the Oscars. So it's too bad. Kevin Bacon is fantastic and should be recognized by the Academy at some point here. Come on. Hugh Grant is another talented actor who has, I would argue, gotten close to an Oscar nomination twice. The first time for 4 Weddings and a Funeral, which got into Best Picture at the Oscars, and he won the Golden Globe Award in Motion Picture Comedy or Musical. And especially, I would say, Florence Foster Jenkins. Hugh Grant got in at Golden Globes and SAG and BAFTA for that movie. Meryl Streep got a Best Actress Oscar nomination, so Hugh Grant was probably close on that one. Delroy Lindo is a phenomenal talent who should have gotten his first Oscar nomination a few years back for Da 5 Bloods from Spike Lee. He is magnetic in that movie. He's so memorable. It's a shame the Academy didn't recognize him with a nomination. Bruce Willis is another famous actor who never got recognized by the Academy. If it had happened once, it would have been for The Sixth Sense. Like, the Academy loved that movie so much. I mean, Toni Collette was a surprise Best Supporting Actress nominee, and she didn't get into a single precursor ceremony. And so, given that The Sixth Sense also got into Best Picture and Best Director at the Oscars, I do think an Oscar nomination for Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense would have been very cool. And Jeff Daniels, another one of my favorites who has never been recognized by the Academy. How can this be? How has Jeff Daniels never been Oscar nominated? I mean, okay, he wasn't going to be recognized for Dumb and Dumber. Like, that wasn't going to happen, but what about The Purple Rose of Cairo from the 1980s, and especially The Squid and the Whale from 2005? He and Laura Linney are so fantastic in that movie, and it still surprises me to this day that they didn't get in at the Oscars. Jeff Daniels is a colossal talent and should be an Oscar nominee. And finally, that takes me to my number one choice. Who is the number one male actor who's never received an Oscar nomination? Like, who would be at the top of my list? Well, speaking of Dumb and Dumber, like speaking of that classic comedy, my number one choice is Jim Carrey.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
This man is and has always been a total original, like coming on to the cinema scene in '94 with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective and The Mask and Dumb and Dumber. Like, he just swept me off my feet when I was 10 years old. There was nobody like this guy in the movies, and as his star status kept growing, I wondered, like, is he ever going to try to do a drama? Like, will that happen one day? Well, it happened pretty shortly after he became such a superstar. 1998's The Truman Show from director Peter Weir is a masterpiece. It's my third favorite film of all time. I watch it maybe once a year. I just find it so moving, so interesting. And that Jim Carrey performance in the lead role is a stunning all-timer. He wins the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a Motion Picture Drama, and then he doesn't get the Oscar nomination, and it still pisses me off to this day. But I was like, okay, he's shooting an Andy Kaufman biopic from director Milos Forman. That will probably get him an Oscar nomination. Cut to a year later, he wins the Golden Globe again, this time in motion picture, musical, or comedy. He gets in at SAG. Not everybody knows this. Jim Carrey got a SAG Award nomination for Man on the Moon in Best Actor. And again, he doesn't get the Oscar nomination. And then 5 years after that, he gives what's probably his best dramatic performance ever in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which wins the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, which gets Kate Winslet into Best Actress. But once again, the Academy snubs Jim Carrey, and he doesn't get the Oscar nomination for Best Actor. And it just drives me crazy. So many awards voters look at Jim Carrey and see a comedian. They don't see the gifted actor he is in both comedy and drama. He's been fantastic in lots of other movies along the way, but those three performances, The Truman Show, Man on the Moon, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, like one of those three performances should have been recognized by the Academy. And sadly today, outside of a miracle, I don't think Jim Carrey is really pursuing much film work. He pops up in Sonic the Hedgehog and things. I would love, with a capital L, some auteur director to give Jim Carrey a rich character part in a movie again. It would fill my heart with joy if Jim Carrey gave another great dramatic performance again, and he got in at Golden Globes and SAG and the Oscars this time. Like, wouldn't that just be amazing, extraordinary? Totally frickin' overdue for this legendary talent. Jim Carrey is just one of the best, and he is my number one choice for male actor who should have received an Oscar nomination. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think of my picks for the non-Oscar nominated male actors? Is there anyone I left off the list? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.